BookTube, and welcome to a new video. This is a tag video. This is the ratings and review tag, which was originated by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I was tagged by Courtney Ferreter, and it does what it says on the tin. It's asking you about your logic, such as it is in my case, of how you rate books and your approach to reviews. So, question 1, tag folks. I'm going to tag Zena at Beating Around the Books. I'm going to tag Daniel at Guilty Feet, although I'm not sure that he does tags. I would have tagged quite a few people, but Courtney has tagged a lot of people. She wants to spread this far and wide. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, because a lot of the people I would have tagged have already been tagged. So, 2, how do you know you've just finished a good book? Is it a thinking or a feeling response? A thinking response, in my case, I think. Books can have an emotional effect, but that's not the primary reason I'm reading them. I mean, let's sort of put it out there. Books are a form of entertainment, just as TV or watching baseball or going to an art gallery, you know, whatever your thing, books have to compete in that market. So first and foremost, if you're giving up 6 to 8 hours to read a book over the course of however long that's going to take you, it's got to have some, you know, pulling power on you. So unfortunately I'm not a person who bails, so I don't have that option. So I guess that there are books that I read which I don't enjoy. Occasionally I hate read, but on the whole a book has to be entertaining. Now I have lots of different factors as to what makes a book entertaining, which I'll probably cover in some of the other prompts, but I tend to be sort of more ideas led in reading than I am feelings. But having said that, as you'll probably see from, again, some of the my answers to the rest of the questions, I don't really have a system. It's quite haphazard and inconsistent, so maybe that does come back to feeling. I'm not sure. 3, when you begin to form your review rating, what is the first question you'll ask yourself? I don't. I don't have a first question. By the time I've read a book, bang, I know what my rating is pretty much. I certainly know what I'm going to say about the book in a review. Again, does that mean it's feeling rather than thinking? No, because the thoughts towards that endpoint have been formed in the process of reading the book. So it's not completely random. 4, do you do star ratings? Why or why not? I do. I do it because I joined Goodreads and that was the system they employ. I do have a certain frustration that that they don't have half stars. I mean, in a way, I'd rather it was just rated out of 10 rather than 5. So quite often when I have a 0.5 book, such as 3.5 or 4.5, I will put that in my review at the head. So, you know, so I've rated it 4 stars, and I'll say 4.5 stars in reality. Now, the interesting question is, if a book is 4.5 stars, do you rate it 4 stars on Goodreads, or do you rate it 5 stars on Goodreads? I'm not consistent in this. What I think the way I operate, and again, I'm not claiming to be consistent all the way through, is that if I liked a book, it's always been 5 stars, but hasn't been. I don't want to give the impression that it is 5 stars by awarding it 5 stars. So I would tend to make that 4.5. However, if there's a 4.5 book that's basically would have been a 5-star read, but there was something in it that just knocked half a star off, I'm more likely to rate that 5 stars on Goodreads, but say 4.5 stars in reality. But like I say, I'm not claiming consistency. So 4A, if yes, explain your star rating system. What does a good book get in your rating system? And 2, is your star rating consistent? I.e., are all your 5-star ratings, 5-star books better than all your 4-star books? Well, no, I think I've just explained that part. My star rating system. Okay, so I almost never give a 1 star. Probably the last time I gave a 1-star rating was 4 years ago, and it's for a book that I felt completely cheated by. It was a non-fiction book, and I thought it was going to be something. It was advertising itself as something that it wasn't, because it was a book basically in which the author was paying off political schools, which I had no interest in. So I almost never give 1 star. So realistically, the lowest rating I give for fiction is 2 stars, which is a book I really didn't enjoy. And then 3 stars is a meh book. 4 stars is pretty good, but not good enough to get to 5 stars. Now, my 5-star rating, I've said this before, is not a perfect book by any means, but there is enough in it that has stimulated me, set me thinking, carried on the work of that book after I finished reading it. You know, whatever its appeal to me. So, for example, this year, my top 10 books of the year are all not perfect books, but all of them had, you know, an immense amount to offer, I believe. Now, that doesn't mean I can recommend them all, because some of them are so sort of particular to my interests that I'd feel they were too sort of limiting, really, not have broad appeal. And I think, I mean, I haven't counted it up yet, I haven't done my stats yet, but I've read almost 100 works of fiction, which I include poetry. And I would say I'm probably coming up close to 35 to 40 of those being 5-star books. And somehow I'm going to have to sift that down to 10 for my top 10 reads of the year. Do you believe every book has its perfect reader? Does this contradict the idea that a book could be bad? I find this question really difficult because as a writer I don't have a type of reader in mind for my own work. So I just struggle with this concept of a perfect reader for specific books. Does this contradict the idea that a book can be bad? I don't understand that. Books can be bad. I say that, I suppose, I'm making a judgment that such and such a book is bad, and maybe that's purely subjective to me, in the same way as I said, some of my sort of quite sort of limited appeal books, I judge them to be subjectively good. So yeah, I just struggle with that question in both its parts. 6. What book that you hated have you recommended? I've never recommended them, but I've said still worth a read. If you think you might be interested, but I'm going to have to think about that because I haven't prepared my answers. So what I might do is at the end of this video come back and give you a book where I think that's applied. Although hated is pretty strong. 7. What makes a book good, bad or great by your evaluation? Okay, so it comes back to what I said. Books that offer me something different, usually in a formalistic or linguistic way rather than a different subject that they're looking at or a different culture that they're looking at or whatever. So I appreciate books about different cultures because I learn more than I knew before I read that book. But on a more sort of universal level, for me, I like books that stretch my thinking about what novels could do, how they do it, the language they employ in doing it, but also ideas. You know, I'm not every book has to have a message book kind of reader, but I like when I'm made to think about something I didn't know before in a sort of wider philosophical way, I suppose, or even having my own set views challenged. 8. When evaluating the quality of a book, do you have specific criteria or aspects of the book, such as character development, you consider? Does this change if you are writing an in-depth review versus just thinking about the book for enjoyment? Well, I don't write any reviews really. Certainly not in-depth ones. I always think about a book for enjoyment, but obviously my enjoyment is different to somebody else's. But on a very simple level, Alexander Theroux is an author I like. He sends you to the dictionary on every page for words you've never heard of. That, for me, is a great source of enjoyment, of discovering new words. But I know that annoys a lot of people being dragged out of the narrative because they've got to go and pick up a dictionary or look it up online. So we all have different notions of what enjoyment are. But when evaluating the quality of a book, do you have specific criteria of aspects of the book? Not really. I don't like blandly written language in books. I like tough language. Language that has been thought through. Thoughtfully thought by the author. Imaginative language. I happen to believe. I'm not character led, which I think was one of the things it meant. Yeah, character development. First of all, I don't like books where the characters go on a journey, spiritual or intellectual or emotional journey. I don't believe in character arcs having anything to do with real human beings and real life. So I try and avoid books like that. But for me, I'm more interested in voice, the voice of the narrator, the voice of the characters, because I think voice encapsulates everything that character does and more. So, for example, you could tell the educational level of a character through their voice. You could tell how they view the world, what their value system is, blind spots they may have, or idée fixée that they might have, all through voice. Now, you could do all that through character as well. But if you just do it through how they construct their speech and how they construct their thought in the book, it seems to be a lot less artificial than I'm going to create a character who is going to express this, that and the other. Voice will do it for you organically. And I think to me is a much more important factor than character. So that's part of what I mean by good writing, both language and the construction of the voice of the book. 9. Do you consider star ratings or average ratings when choosing books to read to add to your TBR? No, I don't at all. I come to books that sound interesting to me either through BookTube reviews, where not everyone would have rated it, or just by a sort of, again, organic process of referencing books. So for example, Zena asked me if I'd read a book called Mac and His Problem by a Spanish writer. I'll post the link to my review of it. I said I hadn't. It sounded interesting. I picked it up and read it. It was pretty good. It was a sort of solid 4-star. But it mentioned in the text a book by George Perec, who's an author I like. It was his last book called 53 Days, which I'd never heard of, the book. But he actually discussed it a bit in the text, so I ordered that, and that was absolutely fantastic. That definitely gets in my top 10 of the year, whereas Mac and His Problem doesn't. So that was, I just sort of came by that, as I say, by sort of referencing, either directly referencing texts, or you may read a review where this book is mentioned or it shares something with another book, that kind of thing. So that between that and BookTube is really how I get my recommendations. So star ratings do not come into it. I mean, if I think about it, if you're browsing in a bookshop and you pick up a book you've never heard of, you read the blurb, it doesn't have a star rating. I mean, yes, there might be some press quotes which have star ratings, but it's not going to have a Goodreads rating on it. So you've only got the blurb. And the way blurbs work on me is there will be a word or a concept that strikes me as interesting and worth pursuing by buying and reading the book. It's not the blurb as a whole, which is giving you the plot and the character. I'm not interested in that. There'll be something in that blurb that just triggers me in a good way. 10. Who on BookTube does reliable and interesting reviews of books that you can use to decide if a book is for you or not? What makes their reviews so good? I can't answer this because you're just going to offend anyone you leave out. But I will say, and I agree with Courtney on this, is there are booktubers who you like because they share a similar taste in books to you. They're not necessarily as analytical as others, but the taste correlates and matches up much more than others who are more analytical, but maybe not reading books that are in my wheelhouse. So I just do want to make one special mention, and that's Bob the Bookerer, because I think our tastes are very similar. So I get recommendations from Eric Carl Anderson in his book haul. Sorry, they're not reviewed or recommendations, but he's hauled them, and just by the way he sort of talks about them before he's read them, they sound interesting to me. So it's almost like sort of he's giving his version of a blurb from what he's read up in advance, and I'm responding to that. So that's not based on a review, but because Eric hauls so many books, again in my wheelhouse, or a lot of them, that's one big source for me from BookTube. And another, as I say, is from the reviews, is Bob the Bookerer. And again, I will say that Courtney very kindly said I was one of her influencers on her choice of poetry. But actually, as I said to her in my comment on hers, I barely read any poetry before I came onto BookTube. It's been a recent development for me, and a very welcome one, I have to say. So that I've actually also got many recommendations of interesting American poets, contemporary poets, from her, and also from Roz at Scully Dangling Around the Books. So poetry, which is not my strength, I am maybe more reliant on recommendations and reviews from booktubers than novels, where I know my own mind, I know what appeals to me, I know what buzzwords are going to set me off like catnip to pick up a book. And 11. Does those booktuber use different language than you to evaluate and review the overall quality of a book? I think most of the people I follow have a different approach to books than me, mainly but not exclusively because I approach what I read as a writer. So there's always a part of my review where I'm looking at what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it from a writer's perspective. So I'm not really influenced by how people put across their reviews. So yeah, I think most booktubers that I follow do use different language to me, but we each do what works for us, right? And what I do is not going to work for a reviewer, be they a booktuber themselves or a reader but not a booktuber. Okay, so there you have it. That was the ratings and review tag. I was tagged by Courtney, thanks to Courtney, and via the originators Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. So till next time, thanks very much.